Hello everybody, James here. So I don't normally do reviews of wrestling shows because generally what I want to speak about and basically my opinions on stuff doesn't seem to jive with anybody else's whatsoever. But hey, maybe that might be the appeal of them, I don't know. But the WrestlePalooza review I did a couple of months ago did pretty good in the views, so I thought I might as well try again. Look, I watched the show, I might as well talk about it for 15 minutes or so. But anyway, first off, I was like, damn, why did they do the show in an open-air stadium in November? But it turned out it was in San Diego, so I guess it wasn't going to be too chilly. But I've been in quite a few stadiums over the years, and I always find it's like T-shirt weather walking to the venue, whether it's the Etihad or Old Trafford or wherever it might be. But then, and this is specifically the ones where it's shaped like a bowl, not just like an open-air kind of thing where, what I figure is, I don't know if just like air gets trapped or cold wind gets trapped in these open air stadium kind of things, but it's always coat weather in a stadium where it might be t-shirt weather on the outside. So the lesson is to overdress for these types of things. That's my advice. But anyway, before I go on, I'd like to point out that I saw a post. I couldn't find it to show it to you, but some fan took a photo from, it was like diagonally on the ring. It was the floor seats, but it was quite far back on the floor seats, it seemed. Anyway, the fan was complaining, saying these tickets were $900 per seat, and he couldn't see any of the ring, right? So here's two things. One, you need to make sure that if you are on the floor, don't get an angle, basically, if it's going to be one of these stadium shows, because they're always going to have, the canopy and then the scaffolding holding up the canopy. So you don't want something where you're like at a 45-degree angle, because you will have a hampered view. Secondly, if you're going to get floor seats, you need to get them very, very near the front, or I promise you, you aren't going to see much of anything unless the ring is incredibly raised up, which in WWE or pretty much anywhere, it isn't. So that's my advice. If you're going to get floor seats, don't, unless you're going to get basically front few rows. Ultimately, you should always go for the first tier seats because you will always see way more of the show, even if the scaffolding is in the way. I promise you that's the best way to do it. Anyway, let's get to the show itself. The WarGames women's match. This is going to be, once again, I'm going to be skipping through these for the most part, these matches. I'm just going to be making points based off of some of the matches on the show. But anyway, kind of boring. And also, it went on for like an eternity. And it's the same length, pretty much, to the second almost, as the men's WarGames match at the main event. But this brings up a separate point. 41 minutes for an opening match. When is it ever a good idea? Never. It's never a good idea to open up a PLE with a 41-minute match, especially the women's match, which had nowhere near the amount of heat or even, storyline emphasis to a point, I guess, as the men's one. So it's almost the filler WarGames match, what I'll get onto in a second as well. But apart from there are isolated spots where the fans are into it, but there wasn't anywhere near as much heat as the men's match. The only thing where the fans really got on their feet for, apart from, once again, a couple of isolated incidents, was the finish, where Io Sky put the old bin on her head and did the flip off the cage to on top of Becky Lynch, I think, for the win. So anyway, not really much else to add to that, other than Becky Lynch did a heck of a job acting like she was scared of AJ Lee. I mean, it's like being scared of a Tiny Treasure Tinkle baby doll, and you can tell I'm doing my Christmas shopping at the moment with that reference. But anyway, the real point is that 41 minutes of a match with sporadic heat at best to open a show. This is the problem with having the equality of speciality matches on every show, where you must have one for the men and one for the women on every show. Now, there's a problem with this, and this isn't a sexism problem. It doesn't have to be always the men having it or always the women having it. It's just having two of the same speciality match on the same show, especially with a PLE with 4 matches on it. Now, you often end up in these circumstances of having a stipulation that needs a match rather than a match that needs a stipulation, if you see what I mean. Well, WarGames Survivor Series is coming up, so therefore we have to have a WarGames match. How do we artificially, well, it's all artificial, we know, but how do we overtly, artificially book a WarGames match in 3 weeks to build up for it, And it doesn't stir the blood, I guess you could say. So, invariably, because these are two big matches, same with Money in the Bank, same with the Royal Rumble, you have to have one of these matches open the show, and then pretty much one of the matches to close the show, because the PLE pay-per-view is all wrapped around the stipulation of the matches. So anyway, in the first match, it's always going to be the less over of the two matches, or nearly always anyway, or the less important of the two. And in the first match, you pretty much throw in everything plus the kitchen sink before the first hour is up. So you've already practically seen everything you're ever going to see on the show within the first hour, so you don't build up anticipation for the main event where it's kind of more of the same, if you know what I mean on that sense. Now, opening matches, once again, and I nearly put 10 minutes here, or maybe 15 minutes. Now, I put 20 minutes, but opening matches have no reason to go really beyond 20 minutes. And weirdly, what came in my mind was Johnny B. Bad and Brian Pillman, because I think that went 20 minutes, and then they had the match beyond for a couple of minutes afterwards. And that was great, and that really, really is the exception to the rule. Another exception to the rule was CM Punk and Drew McIntyre Hell in a Cell last year, but ultimately I still think that should have been the main event. But you get this problem, and it's two problems really. One, these major events only have 4, maybe 5 matches on them. So therefore you have to have a degree of separation between the two stipulation matches, and therefore one must go beginning, and therefore one must go in the main event. Which, once again, to highlight what I said before, are problems with the pacing of a major show. But the other issue is that because it's a major stipulation match, they just don't go 10 minutes or 15 minutes. They go, like this, 40 minutes, or in the Royal Rumble case, over an hour. And it's way too long for an opening bout. And it's even longer for an opening bout where the match is kind of just filler inserted in the show due to obligation rather than something that's actually something to get properly excited over. Anyway, the good guys won. But if I'm not mistaken, and this is going to go to the main event as well, the WCW WarGames matches, for the most part, had 2 minutes in between the next entry, almost like a Royal Rumble, so you constantly had that excitement. 3 minutes, I just feel, is way too long. And War Games matches are all about the pacing. You have, a few minutes at the beginning. I would do 3 minutes at the beginning, then 2, then the match beyond. With WWE these days, they have 5 minutes at the beginning. I think WCW had 5 minutes at the beginning as well. But I would, for me, just because I just like quicker pacing and just getting on with it, instead of just extending stuff for the sake of it, I would do 3 minutes for the beginning 2 to face off, then 2 minutes, then the match beyond. Make that could be whatever length it really needs to be, I guess. But the fact is that if you've got no intrigue or nobody going for pinfalls, what's 3 times 8? 24 minutes. That's a lot of time to have plus 5 minutes. So that's 29 minutes, not including the entrances as well, so that all drags it all out more. So including the entrances, depending on who's coming out, if it's a Roman Reigns to start, we'll be here all day. But, that could be, 36 minutes or something like that before any pinfalls or submission attempts mean anything. So I think it should be 3-2-2-2 and just get on with it. Anyway, once again, dragged out too much. I do prefer the WCW way of doing things. Now, I think I've got a Mandela effect here, and this will go on to the men's match as well, because Brock Lesnar left the cage. I, at some point, always thought, but I must be wrong here, because I tried to look it up and couldn't find it, that if you left the cage for any reason, you forfeited the match for your team. But I think I'm misremembering that. But tell me if that was a rule in some War Games matches. Anyway, next match. John Cena versus Dominick Mysterio. I think the best match on the card for my money, which is kind of sad, really, because I was just checking how long it went. 16 minutes 40. Because it was a by-the-numbers John Cena affair in 2025, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the fact is that the heat was great and the fans were into it, of course, and if nothing else, Cena matches in 2025 at least tell a very clear, obvious story, which is always very welcome. Now, the other thing that the match had going against it, actually, was I was absolutely sure that Dominic was winning, and it turns out he won. And the reason why I was sure of that was because it made no sense for John to go into his last match as the IC champion and then win, because then you sort of kill off the belt, really, because then you just have to do yet another tournament, and there is there is a glut of tournaments going on these days, especially in AEW, but we're currently in one with WWE with the Last Time Is Now tournament. We don't need more tournaments. to find out a new IC champion. So now he's lost the belt, and also the other thing that would not have made much sense was that John Cena lose in his retirement match. I know it was fine for Goldberg, but I think John Cena has too much history in WWE, and it's too much of a feel-good moment. He has to win it, I think. I'm presuming he's winning it, but I don't know. Once again, watching a show, absolutely sure there's going to be a title change isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to, as Dutch would say, slap me in the face with what you're going to get on this match. Give the people what they want, if indeed they wanted Dominick to win. Whereas still, he's got a lot of fans, but still a lot of people who hate him in a wrestling sense, I guess. But in that bit, you sort of trade off sort of a guaranteed title win for the intrigue there, I guess. So it's whatever you want, I suppose. Let's talk about the two main spots of the match that were done very well. So the fake injury spot was done really well indeed. It did look like a powerbomb Hurricane Rana gone wrong to a point, or, John Cena had lost his footing. Now, this is, of course, a play on the legitimate Penta injury from WWE Raw on Monday, where he went for a Hurricane Rana on Solo Sikoa. Last Monday. This is Monday as I'm recording. I was confusing myself. Last Monday. And I think we sort of agreed, Stevie and I, that the Hurricane Rana was so loose that maybe Penta just dropped down a tiny bit, and then he put his arm down to brace himself. It's the arm that he's apparently had trouble with in the past, and he's done something bad to his shoulder, and now it appears that he's going to be out for a while. So Dominick did the same thing on the barricade on the outside, went for the Hurricane Rana, and John Cena kind of given this really awkward power bomb that was high on the shoulder. Quite gentle, ultimately. If you watch it back again, and I'm not going to do the whole Stevie Richards analysis thing, that's going to be for Stevie to do come Friday's episode, I think. We record on Wednesday, so it'll probably be out on Thursday, but we'll see. But I was sure it was fake at first, but they kind of let it dwell so long that even I started going, maybe this has gone wrong as well, and they've 0 for 2 on these Hurricane Rana attempts for luchadors. But no, it wasn't in the end. And I kind of thought the reason why is because when it's a real injury compared to when it's a fake injury, the production team do something different. They kind of cut away, or the camera doesn't know quite what to do if it's a real thing, whereas if it's a pre-planned pretend injury, then I guess the production's a little more composed with it, I suppose. But once again, it was landed really well. It really did look botched, I guess, but once again, they just did a really good job with it. So the real confusion after this was that Dominick then sprang to his feet. So he's feigning injury for ages, and Roxanne Perez, Raquel Rodriguez start attacking John Cena. They get him in the 619 position, draped over the second rope, and then Dominick springs to life, takes advantage of it, he does his finishers, and then goes for the pin. But then the referee doesn't count. And I've seen things where people said, what's the referee doing? It doesn't matter if he's pretended to be injured, there's no legal reason for it. And I originally thought, what a doofus this referee is. He's getting butthurt, all in his own feelings, you might say, because Dominick fooled him. But no, I don't think that was the reason or the story they were going for. It's because the referee is actually clever, that he knows that John Cena, who he had left in the ring just fine, and then turns around and he's on the 619 position after, I'm also presuming, hears slamming and banging on the ring canvas, knows that Roxanne and Raquel had interfered, and that's why he refused to count the pin, because he knew something had happened, and that's why he then immediately ejects both Roxanne and Raquel. So that's why he didn't count the pin. Originally, I thought he was just being weirdly emotional, but no, he throws out the girls because he knows they've interfered, or he strongly suspects. So I thought that was actually clever in the end. Now, we get to the Liv Morgan portion at the end of the match. So Liv Morgan's music plays, everybody's happy, she seems like she's finally returned, and then she faces off with Dominick, and then she slaps him. But the thing is that the slap looks so terrible, even with like the perfect angle pretty much, it looked like that she'd whiffed over the top of his head. And I thought, oh man, that looked terrible. But in storyline sense, it makes sense, because I think Cena was pretty much behind her at the point, so she could do that, like a fake slap, a fake slap in wrestling kind of thing. And then Liv turns around, hugs Cena, and then does the frowny face like Cena did at Elimination Chamber when he turned heel, and then she kicked him in the balls, and then Dominick wins the match after the frog splash. Now, I think the slap thing was meant to look as fake as possible. That's just my opinion. Maybe she just didn't want to hurt Dom. I don't know. But I don't know if I'm putting storylines in my head there, but I think they should go with it and say, look, didn't you see how much I missed that slap by? I obviously wasn't going to hit him, but anyway, there you go. So, Cena once again loses the belt. Once again, I think that's for the best, because now he can go to his last match and actually win it, give a feel-good moment for all the fans in, I believe, Washington. Now, as an aside, and this is something I would like to see Dominick do. So quite a few times throughout the match, the fans are chanting, and he does this a lot. He does this to annoy the fans, obviously, without a visible muscle on his body, which is great. But then he also, when the fans are chanting whatever it might be, to get to Dom, he puts his hands over his ears. And that's all well and good. That's an old classic heel trope. But I think he could do it better. And I say this because I was thinking of Mick McManus. Now, if you don't know who he is a very old-timey British wrestler. I think he's long gone now. He lived a very old age. And what he would do is, he would constantly say, don't touch the ears, don't touch the ears. And then when the baby faces would go for his ears, he'd freak out and, be a proper crybaby about it. I would love to see Dom react like... Do you remember how Christian, back in like 2001 or something, was constantly losing matches, maybe 2002? And then he would have a massive temper tantrum. I'd love to see Dom doing a huge temper tantrum when he's doing it, because all he's doing is just walking around. I think it would be great if he really got into it and started pounding his fists and crying and all that kind of thing, just to sort of, fully exploit that spot as much as possible. I think that'd be a really good thing for him to do. I'm going to move on. Stephanie Vaquer versus Nikki Bella. Now, it was the worst match on the show, I'll grant you, in a sense. But in a sense that it was only like, it went 12, 13 minutes, something like that, which in that sense, it was kind of better than the women's WarGames match, because at least it was over quicker. But once again, this match just went too long. And also, occasionally, I just have to listen to Dave Meltzer's reviews just to get really annoyed. And in amongst all the praising of AEW he did while trying to, obviously, review Survivor Series, because he can't help himself, he said that this was an absolute disaster. And I watched it at the time, and I was like, I don't think it's that bad, but, I was just doing family stuff and kind of in and out the room while it was on the TV. So I rewatched it. It wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't that good, but the way that Meltzer was talking about it, I'm sure I don't know if checks are being cashed, or he's getting his, hourly phone call from Tony Khan praising him for whatever, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, if you didn't watch it yourself, or you didn't have that knowledge in your head thinking, oh, I'm going in watching in the worst match, I really don't think it was that bad at all. It wasn't good, but there you go. It was sort of average, maybe a little below average. It was maybe 4 or 5 out of 10. It wasn't a 1 out of 10 like you might have thought by if you made the mistake of listening to Meltzer's complaining about it. But that being said, it was too long. There were a couple of bits where Nikki Bella was completely lost, where just she and Steph just stared at each other for like 2 or 3 seconds. Then they went into the next spot, and they kind of half saved it. There was one bit where Nikki was in the corner. I think Nikki had done like the weakest big boot, like to stop Stephanie from running into her. And then Stephanie and Nikki look at each other for a couple of seconds, then goes into was it a dragon screw? Is that what the dragon screw is, where you grab the leg and you flip it? I think that's what it is. But once again, Nikki's not that great. Stephanie is really good, of course. But here's the thing with Nikki, is that WWE seem to be doing the old Michelle McCool treatment toward the fans, the old gaslighting treatment in regards to Nikki Bella. And the reason I say that is because they seem to be gaslighting fans into trying to convince you, or to try and pretend all these years, that Nikki is an all-time women's legend and trendsetter on par with Trish Stratus or Lita. And she isn't, and she never was. She was the second most popular twin in an era where the women's division was kind of a pretty miserable division in a horrible state by and large. Now, she also exposes that she's struggling to keep up with the modern women these past few weeks, especially from like nearly killing Roxanne Perez a few weeks ago by like nearly knocking her out legitimately twice. And then here where she was just getting lost here and there. But that being said, like Nikki still wasn't that bad in this match, but she struggles to keep up with the likes of Stephanie Vaquer and some others, I think. But once again, I think Stephanie's aggressiveness and just how over the Devil's Kiss move is at the moment, and the massive corkscrew off the top, for the win. It wasn't that bad. I mean, the crowd weren't into it, of course. You're in the death spot here. You're in between a Cena match and you're in between the men's War Games main event, and this is just a place where inevitably a women's match is going to be, and people are inevitably just not going to care that much, because you can even see I'm not going to do the camera switching thing, but you can just, there's loads of people. As I look at it, there are just loads of people, and this is not the finish, in the crowd, just stood up, just waving, because they're just waiting for it to get going. I mean, get going from the ring and leave. So, once again, this match needed to be 8 minutes. It was more like 13 or near enough 13, plus entrances. And this just goes to show you it's the artificial lengthening, extending of every match, because they only bothered to book 4 matches on a PLE, which has got to be, if it's not a record, I always thought there was always like at least 5 matches on every PLE, but there must be a few where they've got 4 now. I think they're eventually going to get it down to 1. They're going to get it down to one 1-hour match with 1.5 hours worth of entrances. And here's what's interesting. This was like a 2-hour 40-something show, which for the most part makes it like barely longer than an average WWE Raw. But at least in this, they only had vignettes or like pre-hype packages before the matches. That's it. I don't think they had anything in the way of advertising. Like, they weren't doing the LJN dolls, or the update of the LJN dolls, or fan access for 15 minutes kind of thing in the middle. They were actually getting on with the matches for the most part. But once again, artificially extending everything out and taking forever. Now, WarGames men's main event. I'll be very quick because I don't want to drone on too long. I think Punk and Bron Breakker start. Bron Breakker took a doomsday device that I don't know if this was a major botch or he just wanted to take it almost on the top of his head. But when he sat up after the fact and he rolled through it, he did not look happy. So I don't know if he was expecting just to be let down gently, like an electric chair drop, or he just didn't get over properly. But once again, you've got to look at the people like who are holding you up there. Are they the right height? Are you small enough to be able to do the flip? Are you athletic enough? Which Bron is, but he just landed really horribly. A couple more points, we'll get to the end. Jey Uso interrupting the match to do his dance. Boy, am I getting sick of Jey Uso on that damn dance. I'm so sick of it. It's mad irritating to me now. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns brawl on the outside, and once again I could have sworn, and this is why I mentioned it, I could have sworn that was a DQ, but maybe that's either NWA or something I made up in my head. Anyway, the end of the match, a mystery man walks in, dressed all in black, and curb stomps CM Punk. I actually had to pause and just double rewatch that. Yeah, it was CM Punk who got pinned after the curb stomp. So anyway, the inference is that Seth Rollins is back under the hood, but apparently not. He's got shoulder surgery. I think he's going to be lucky. I think it was a shoulder injury, whatever it was. I think he's going to be lucky to be back by WrestleMania, so I think most people are thinking, well, it's obviously not Seth Rollins, because why would he mask himself? So, anyway, my initial thought was Chris Jericho. Or it can be basically anybody, and then, for a month or two, and then you can reveal it to be whoever you want it to be, so you can just have whatever stunt double to be the masked person. But anyway, I thought, well, maybe it isn't Chris Jericho, because I'm presuming he's going to be back as a babyface. Obviously, his contract isn't up yet, but once again, it can be revealed to be Chris Jericho later on down the line when or if he signs with WWE from AEW, of course. Then, ultimately, I thought it'd be great if it was Rick Steiner as a dexterous play on WCW's Mystery Man that also turned out to be Rick Steiner, but I think he was dressed more like a bumblebee at that point rather than someone with a black hoodie and a mask on. Anyway, according to reports from the likes of PW Insider and Fightful, it's none other than Austin Theory. That was the guy under the dark clothing who did the curb stomp, and once again, it's been rumoured for ages that Paul Heyman absolutely loves Austin Theory, just like Vince McMahon loved Austin Theory, and ever since Triple H took over, his push has very much stalled from, one of the hot young up-and-comers to basically a dude for the last couple of years with Grayson Waller. Now, I already think the Vision. I already think the Vision is struggling, quite frankly, to be a group of any true interest. I wasn't that keen. I've never been keen on. I'm not sure Seth Rollins is the guy to be a leader of a group, and now he's gone. Now it's just Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, which I still don't get as a tandem. And now they've got Logan Paul. Now they've got Brock Lesnar here and there and everywhere. And now they might have Austin Theory. It's just kind of a hodgepodge, I guess. I don't know if this is just a new version of the Dangerous Alliance, but the Dangerous Alliance was way more interesting, I thought. They had loads more personalities. But that's my opinion. Anyway, on the way out, the bad guys won, by the way. On the way out, Paul Heyman shoved a fan, but that's going to be its own video. So I will say this. It was a completely average show. The men's match was better than the women's match as far as WarGames go. I think the John Cena and Dominick Mysterio match was the best, but once again, nothing egregiously offensive, nothing egregiously terrible, nothing egregiously good either. So it's kind of just flatline average across the board there. Nothing you really have to go out of your way to watch. And once again, I'm sure on social media, as WWE and everybody else is, they've got the Masked Man thing if you want to watch it there, which is the only real bit of intrigue. And at least they'll have that to go on for Raw and maybe the next few weeks as they figure out who it's going to be. But that's pretty much it. A classic 5 out of 10 show, I would say. I'm not going to do many reviews like this, so you tell me if you liked them or if you tell me... well, I don't know. I'm not going to listen to you either way. I guess I'll just do whatever I'm going to do. But I will see you for the next video, which probably will be the Paul Heyman shoving a fan thing, but we'll see. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. You know all that.